Welcome back to some new r/PettyRevenge stories. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called The Night Race. I worked for a startup company since the very early stages as their only designer. For 2 years I was responsible for everything web and graphic design related. Packaging, collaterals, product images, Amazon listings, etc. Because they couldn't offer me benefits, they hired me as an independent contractor, so I wasn't considered an employee at all. Fast forward 2 years later. The company is making millions a month selling on Amazon. I told them my rate was going to increase to reflect the success of the company and the role I played in such rapid growth. They declined and told me they were going to end my contract. I later learned they were planning to hire someone in India to do the job cheaper. Before they terminated my contract, they asked me to make a website to start selling their products and set up a subscription-based model. They had several brands, so I had to make several websites for each brand. Because they couldn't be bothered to buy the hosting or the domain, I ended up building the whole thing on my personal hosting, with the intention of transferring everything once they bought everything needed to get the site live. Despite reminding them to buy their domains for all their brands and hosting so I could transfer everything before my contract was terminated, they ignored me. After my contract ended, I handed over the files and bought a lot of the domain variations for their brands. Think brand.com, brand.net, brand.store, brand-industry.com, etc. A couple of months went by and I got an email from the CEO asking why I didn't transfer ownership of the domains to them. I forwarded him all my emails, reminding them that it was their responsibility to register the domains, and that I had bought the domains with my own money after they terminated my contract, so I legally owned all of them. He tried to claim trademark violation and start litigation, so I offered to transfer ownership of all the domains for $30,000 each. They had 3 brands, so $90,000. After some back and forth, we settled for $75,000, signed a contract, and they cut me a check. The next story is called Hobby Revenge. I used to own a hobby shop that dealt with games and comics. One of my regular customers was a middle-aged family guy named John. There's a particular collectible card game that was pretty much his only hobby. I was the only place in town running events for it, and the community grew really fast for the game. It was some of my funniest years with the shop. John was at every event. One day he came in to buy things and tried to pass off a fake gift certificate with a large number on it. I was stunned that he would try this. He even had one of his little daughters with him. He made the copy at home. This was at a time when I wasn't using the striped swipeable gift cards, and I immediately knew it was fake. I quietly told him I knew it wasn't real and that he needed to leave. Then, after stewing on it for a few days, I reached out and told him he wasn't welcome back. He apologized, and I never saw or heard from him again. I didn't tell our mutual friends, but he told them what he did. The community for the game grew so big that I had to expand to another tournament day. Between work and family time, John only had 1 day of the week he could game, and I knew a few of the players were going to his house to play. So I announced a new tournament day, which was his only free day, and everyone started coming to the shop instead of his house every week. Years later, I heard he got tired of buying new products and rarely being able to play. He tried to offload his collection, but the game was dying at that point and a lot of the cards basically worthless. The third story is called Fake Tip. I work as a server. This one guy always comes into the restaurant I work at. He usually is pretty quiet and never tips too well. Most of the time he comes with a couple of friends or by himself and sits at the bar and watches a sports game. I've never had a problem with him until he came in one time with a date. I'd never seen the woman before, so I assumed they were new to dating. They sat at a table this time in a more quiet part of the restaurant, and they sat at one of my tables. I had no problem with them and everything was going fine. They asked for the check and I went right around the corner from their table. It was close by, so I was quick. As I was coming back to the table, the guy said to the woman, "Watch this," as he put down a $100 bill on the table. He saw me see, and he was joking like, "Oh, you weren't supposed to see that." I was ecstatic either way. even though it was so obvious he was trying to impress the woman. I didn't care. I waited till they left to go grab the $100 bill. Well, when I unfolded it, it was one of the fake $100 bills for pranks. This freaking guy planned this out to impress this woman. It was so frustrating, because I needed the money, but at the same time I thought it was because I did a great job. Either the woman was in on it, or he decided to be a jerk in 2 different ways. I told my manager, and he was like, wow, that's ridiculous. I decided to hold on to it, because I knew the day would come when I could get back at this guy. 2 weeks later, my manager recognized the guy, and while I was working at the time, I was on a different side of the restaurant, which was already full. My manager found me and asked if I wanted that customer's table as well, and told me he was with the woman from last time. I often joked with my manager about throwing the fake $100 bill back on the table in front of that woman if he ever came back to embarrass him. I thought to myself, yeah, I may be busy already, but I also thought, sure, what's one more table? I told my manager, absolutely, no problem, with a smirk on my face. Before I went over to their table, I ran out to my car to grab the fake $100 that was sitting in my cup holder for this exact moment. I get to their table and they instantly recognize me. The woman seemed normal, but the guy looked like he was nervous. I pretended nothing happened, all the way until I got that check. When I brought the check back, I placed it down on the table as well as the fake 100, but left it unfolded so the fake part was showing. I looked at the guy and said, not sure if you remember me from last time, but I believe you forgot this. Just returning it, because I believed it was too much. The woman looked very confused, so I instantly knew she was not part of it. The guy got all nervous and said, I don't know what that is. I said, oh, my mistake, and laughed and said to the woman, have a good night, and walked away. When I came back, there was a big 0 on the signed copy and a $50 bill, real this time, where the woman was sitting after they had left. One can only assume that the guy didn't want to tip on his card, so he wrote obnoxiously big zeros on the tip. The $50 just happened to be where the woman was sitting, so I think she had placed it there. I don't know what happened with the couple, or if they stayed together. I haven't seen them back since, and it's been a few weeks, and I really hope she looks for his red flags now. The last story is called Dirty Coworker. I'm from country A, and a few years ago I was hired by a company in country B. I had to move to country B for a few months in order to be trained for the job, and then I could go back home to keep working remotely. I was hired more or less at the same time as a few other people from my country. As a result, the company had to find suitable accommodation to put us in for several weeks, and so hotels were not an option. They found apartments for rent and put 2 employees from country A in each apartment. I was the last employee from country A to be hired, and as a result I was accommodated in the only apartment that still had a free spot. My roommate from my country was Jeff. Due to my first day in country B, I was picked up at the train station after a long plane ride. Jeff and others were kind enough to walk me to the apartment building we were all sharing. During the walk, Jeff kept telling me how long he had spent cleaning the apartment to make it ready for me, and I was thankful. However, when we got to the apartment, it was nasty, full of dirt, and what I want to assume were Jeff's weird hairs scattered around the place. The toilet was disgusting, the kitchen was sticky up to the ceiling, so I spent my first few days cleaning everything behind Jeff's back so as not to offend him. Some people's standards of cleanliness are different, so I thought nothing of it. Weeks passed and Jeff never cleaned again. I was absolutely disgusted and anxious the entire time I lived there, and I cleaned the house like a sick person each day to keep it livable for me. On our last night before returning to our home country, I packed my suitcases and cleaned everything. Jeff chose to get drunk instead and not pack his suitcase or clean his room because he said it would take him 10 minutes the next morning. The next morning I got a knock on the door at approximately 9 AM. It was our boss coming to pick up Jeff because his flight was early in the morning. He was going to a different part of our country. Jeff was asleep in his dirty room and I had to wake him up. He panicked, threw a few things in his suitcase and ran for the door. Before he left, I asked if he intended on cleaning his bedroom as he promised, and he begged me to do it because I'm a better cleaner and he was too much in a rush. I called him a pig and he left. I had spent several weeks cleaning after him, not complaining to not come across as annoying, and just putting my head down and cleaning to make the house livable for me. I was so done and did not want to pick up any more hair or dirt coming from this man, so I called our boss. I explained the situation. The company had told us to leave the apartment spotless, otherwise they wouldn't get their deposits back. My boss came to the house to check Jeff's room and was appalled at what he saw. He profusely apologized to me, went to a supermarket and bought new cleaning supplies. Even bought a Hoover from his own house. He spent the next few hours scrubbing the room on his hands and knees. He threw out the clothes and personal items Jeff had forgotten. A few weeks after, and seeing Jeff's performance was completely subpar, he fired Jeff. If he hadn't been such a terrible human, he might have helped him get better at the job, but he chose to fire him instead. I was thanked over and over again for putting up with the situation so gracefully. I also got a raise shortly after. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.